concept was further expanded by this laissez-faire concept by John Stuart Mill and Senior, Nassau Senior. And also they said, okay, let the market operate itself. Government need not intervene. And also that situation remained more or less unchanged for about a century. That means because there was no problem, market was playing a greater role, and also government does not want to interfere with the market concern. That's the kind of situation we could see till the 1929 and after. Because 1929, that was the beginning of the Great Depression. Because many countries of the developed world, they had to suffer because of that. Maybe UK, USA, and other countries. During that period, there was another concept, how to address this crisis situation in the economy. That means recession in the economy. Then the contribution by John Maynard Keynes, the British economist, he had a different view. He encouraged, in the case of crisis situation, economic crisis, depression, or the recession, government is required to intervene. How? We said government, but can you remember what Maynard Keynes has said? How to intervene in the economy during this recession or the depression situation, crisis situation? Can you remember? Anyone?
Increase government expenditure?
Yes, government. In addition, what the the most important thing that he has recommended in his formula?
Demand side consumption?
Yeah, that is after, because this contraction of the economy, because the consumption is less in the case of recession, right? Then, of course, government had to intervene to increase what? Increase money circulation. Money circulation, okay. Because money circulation was less in the case of recession, right? Because firm did not want to invest. Then, of course, what they have, cut down their employment. Then, of course, production has become less and lesser, right? So, then what is to be done if you want to create employment and increase production? Then, of course, you have to, increase money circulation. When money is available, then the industry, that's mean firms, have access to credit. Then the access to credit means then of course they will borrow and they will invest, and also through investment where profit is greater than the cost. Then of course they will invest. With the investment, employment will generate, and also as a result you could see increase in productivity. That is what he has argued. Then at the same time, to increase money supply, government will have to borrow, or government should run deficit, budget, deficit budget. That is what Milton, Maynard Keynes said, and also the formula, that concept was followed by the United States during Roosevelt time. We said, and also then of course because in the case of the United States during recession, what has happened? Then the private bank, they refused to give a loan to the firms concerned, and also that was accepted by the Fed, or the Federal Reserve Bank, right? And also now Federal Bank to increase money circulation, and also ask the other bank also to increase money circulation. That's why. Then money circulation promoted investment, right? Because now, of course, money is available, capital is available, then firm could borrow and invest. Through investment, employment generation, and also employment generation increase labor productivity. That was the answer to the question according to Milton, the Maynard Keynes. Then because of that, and at the same time, of course, when you come to this, the labor, the employees, of course, they wanted to unionize, because the employers at that time, they had problem. They have cut down the employment. they reduce the salaries concern. Because of that, they want to get unionized and also bargain. And also they wanted to go for collective agreement, right? During that period in the 1930s concern. Then, of course, when there was a trade union, agitation, the President Roosevelt wanted to get the trade union side, trade union support, and also ordered the firms to increase salaries concern. Right, and also with that, of course, Ford Foundation. We have said Ford Company, not the foundation. Ford Company, they wanted to practice some innovative, program, right? That they encourage, to increase production and provide employment opportunities for the employees concerned, and at the same time, they encourage employees to, purchase, because they were producing cars, purchase cars, right? And also the production also has gone up. Then, of course, the market is also there, right? That's what they wanted to do. And also because of that, during that period, government wanted to follow both the monetary policy as well as the fiscal policy. Monetary policy to increase money supply, and fiscal policy, when you come to, tax and the tariff tax, they wanted to introduce those the firms who had capital but did not want to invest. Then, of course, they were taxed, right? With a view to encouraging investment. On the other hand, when you want to export your product, right, now production has gone up, you have the export market. Then, of course, tariffs, earlier there were heavy tariff. Then, of course, government has decided to reduce tariff also. With that government intervention, what has happened in the case of the United States, economy has grown up to the extent that USA or the United States has become, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, world #1 powerful economy. So that is because of the contribution made by Monad Keynes, right? Then, of course, that idea, that concept was contested in the 1960s. By whom? By whom? Because maybe another well-known economist did not agree with what Monad Keynes has said. Who was that? Who is that economics? We discuss in detail in the morning. Who is that? Yes, Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman. I think I gave you a brief description about Milton Friedman as a well-known economist. He died in 2006 at the age of 94. And also in his funeral oration, one economist has said that because of his contribution, about 6 billion people of the world have got out of poverty because of his this pro-market concept, because he was a vehement promoter of that's been market system, right? Market system, because I said that he has advised many countries, even in a democratic mean or non-democratic mean, he wanted to expand this market. That means capitalist market system, right? Very conservative economics. That means Chicago economics, because Chicago school is well known in the USA and the world with regard to economics. And also he was there. He did not agree with what Monad Keynes has said with regard to. He agreed partly with regard to money circulation, because during recession, during economic crisis, you have to, because economy is getting contracted, and also increase money circulation is the job of the government. That is what he has said, right? Because when you come to other activities, this he did not support deficit budget. Government should not run deficit budget. Reason he has given, right? Reason he has given. If the government is going to borrow from the market, then of course interest rate will go up. Then that will negatively affect the private firm, because they can't borrow, because if the interest rate is high, then of course the private sector, that's been firm, they can't borrow from the market, right? Because government is there to borrow then of course the interest rate is naturally going up. Then they can't, the private sector people, firms, they can't borrow because he did not support that idea. He did not support deficit budget. Instead, what he has said, government should run a surplus budget, because when the government has surplus budgets, then the interest rate will come down. Then, of course, that is beneficial to firm. That is what he has said. So you can see the difference between, right, Monad Keynes and Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, right? So that is what we have said. And also this part is very important because since we are in a crisis situation in the country, because whatever we learn here, we see the possibility of at least understanding and make any contribution to get rid of this crisis situation. We don't know whether we can contribute, but at least we can understand. We can understand how to find solution to the problem concern. Because our government, what they have done, maybe now, of course, interest rate has come down to 15%, and also earlier it was around 30%, because this SME sector people, they have vehemently agitated over the period, okay, we can't invest, we can't borrow money from the market because interest rate is very high, and that rate we can't borrow and invest. Right? We can't, because they have to run a profitable business, because they are not running charities, because it is reasonable, because you have to borrow at a reasonable rate where borrowed money can be invested and also go ahead with the production and also provide goods and services. Then of course they can earn profit, because business sector, they are very much concerned about profit. Otherwise they can't stay in business, right? Because those who can't compete will go out of business. That's what we have discussed. So therefore, our government, because I do not know whether they are following the concept advanced by Monad Keynes, or they are following the concept advanced by Milton Friedman. We don't see that, because money circulation has increased. That is because of the MMT, and also MMT money circulation, as in the case of USA or other powerful economies, of course, they can increase money circulation because their currency is important, right? Currency, because they can do transaction, worldwide transaction with their currency. But in the case of Sri Lankan rupee, of course, you can't do worldwide or international transaction with our currency, right? That is to be operated within the country. With the international market, you can't do that, because therefore, this MMT does not, I think, work here. But in the case of USA, it will work. Maybe even European Union, that will work. But they are not, even they haven't followed the MMT, right? Because they wanted to follow the, I said with regard to those countries which had, still they have had this crisis situation, economic crisis, like Italy, then Spain, then Ireland, Portugal, etc. They had that problem. And also at that time, they had the same, formula as we are having over here. Only one difference I can see with regard to their formula, because in the case of European countries, which had this economic crisis, we don't see any welfare benefit package. They haven't encouraged any welfare. Even in the case of other countries, of course, what they wanted to do is to cut down welfare facilities. That's been social protection or whatever. In the case of Sri Lanka, they have followed, as far as I am concerned, they have followed a different formula. They encourage a safety net for the vulnerable people. That's mean poor people, right? I think they have contributed, they have tolerated, they have encouraged that. Have a safety net for them. That is what we call Aswasuma or Samurdhi or whatever, right? The poor people, of course, should get some, concession from the government, right? For that, of course, some billions and billion rupees. Because earlier it was about 43 billion rupees annually for this, welfare program, Samurdhi program, etc. Now I think it has gone to about 200 million or more. And also amount to be paid to the beneficiaries has also gone up from 15,000 to I think 5,000 or something like that. I don't know the exact figure, but I have heard of that. And also, but some people still are unhappy about, because maybe IMF has agreed to have this safety net for the vulnerable people, but how to deliver this safety net has become a problem, implementation problem. That's a separate matter. That's to be discussed separately. Maybe from time to time we can take that example, right? And also that's the only difference I could see with regard to any other country when the IMF has intervened in the crisis situation of such countries. Of course, they haven't come out with a welfare package. Welfare, but this going to be an exception in the case of Sri Lanka, because according to my reading, I haven't come across any example, even in the case of South America or even South Africa or European countries. I haven't read that. But here, of course, there is something new and something innovative, their intervention. Apart from that, also what they have said with regard to taxation, I think you have done taxation, session on taxation, of course, but they have said you better increase government revenue. But they haven't said how to do that. It's up to the government to find ways and means, right? Because what the government has done, maybe government has copied the Chinese system, right? China, of course, when you look at the tax bracket from 6% to 36% of their income, those are taxable income. Higher earning people, they have to pay about 36%. The same, system has been introduced in Sri Lanka as well. That is with the view to increase government revenue. Still, we have not been able, because that's only way. Because on the other hand, of course, they have certain, we have said that austerity measures to cut down certain programs, and also maybe some government entities to be privatized. So restructure, they have used the word restructure, but restructure does not mean anything, right? Then restructuring means maybe it could be, management related issue, ownership related issue. Because when you want to have ownership related issue, we have to transfer the ownership, that is through privatization, right? But when you say management related issue, you can change the management. Present mode of management has to be changed to another mode of management, because maybe you have to run, maybe business entities should be run as business entities, not as charities or government-owned entities concerned. That's what Singapore has done. Some other countries, because they too have, maybe even in the case of India, they have business public enterprises. Then China has public enterprises. Then Singapore has public enterprises. But they used to run those enterprises as business entities. But there is no political consideration. That's the problem here. Of course, our people have mixed public enterprises with politics. That's the problem we have, right? So therefore, that maybe IMF, I think you all have to, I think, get yourself familiar with the IMF recommendation. Those are not recommendations, those are conditions. If you want to get the package about $3 billion US, you have to follow these conditions, right? What they have said, these are the recommendations, but these are not recommendations, those are conditions. You have to increase government revenue, because it's about 9% of GDP. You have to increase gradually. And also you have to, on the other hand, you have to, restructure loss-making public enterprises as well. They have already identified, right? What has happened? Government has identified profit-making public enterprises to restructure or dispose, not to restructure, but to sell. Because on the ground that I have heard that some politicians are saying that there is no demand for loss-making entities. Then, of course, they have to be somewhat innovative. Maybe there could be local investors who will undertake the management, and sometimes they can restructure, reorganize that, right? That is to be tried. Maybe you have to change the management system, right? That's another thing, because the alternative ways of doing it. On the other hand, what I said with regard to this Joseph Stiglitz idea, but he has said he has not supported these austerity measures, cut down, right? Cut down. Because instead he has said you have to expand the economy, right? Even with regard to, I think over the years, of course, maybe we have that problem for the last 2 years. Then what is to be done? the government will have to encourage the business sector, because business sector is the production sector, right? Not the government sector. If that is the case, of course, you have to give access to capital and other facilities concerned. Maybe certain concessions should be given to them, right? Maybe that was not taken very well by the government authorities concerned. Maybe they have not given access to credit, and also with regard to other facilities like fuel, energy, etc., because no concession concerned, then because of that, they have to suffer. They have to suffer. And also because of that, because government, I think, moves on a wrong direction. I think now, of course, since interest has come down, of course, maybe business sector will take it positively. But what has happened, government has to be mindful about the role to be played by the business sector. Otherwise, you can't expand the economy. Yeah, the austerity measures will further contribute to contract the economy. Contraction will not help you out to get rid of this problem. You have to have the expansion. Expansion through private sector development and private sector intervention. It is only then maybe you can look at the private sector, maybe even in the case of agriculture sector, because that is again, of course, you have to feed the local people with food stuff concerned. At the same time, they have to promote export sector with to earning foreign currency, because one fine day we know for sure that maybe we are getting some concession period. Maybe we don't know still, because how to restructure foreign debt, because about it is said that 43 billion US dollars. Then of course at the same time you can see government internal borrowing has increased. I think it has gone up to total debt has gone up. It is said that, right, 91 billion US dollars. 91 billion US dollar. Maybe at the same time, internal borrowing for the government operation has increased over the last 1.5 years concern, right? Because if the internal borrowing, and the government will have to be mindful how to control the expenditure side as well, right? Expenditure side as well. You cannot, because you see that maybe austerity measures proposed in the case of the European countries which confronted this economic crisis, the reduction of their income by 40% about, maybe cut down of employment, then cut down of salaries concerned, 40%. They have said the very serious austerity measures concerned, right? That is because of the recommendation of the IMF and the European Union Central Bank and other some financial institution concerned, right? That is how. But in our case, of course, we still didn't get such a kind of severe, restriction. Still, I don't, maybe government is a bit reluctant because we are a democratic country. Government is shaky. It's not a powerful government. And also government does not know what would happen. Maybe maybe in 1 year's time, there will be kind of 2 elections, then the presidential election and parliamentary election. Maybe government is for the time being working toward winning the next election, because that is why government is going to be little harsh now at the moment. But in time to come, they will be more harsh. We don't know. We have to wait and see, right? But what is important, how to get rid of this problem. And also, I think I don't think that I have to continue this crisis-related situation and the relationship with the IMF concern, because what is important to concentrate on the government role in the economy with regard to this crisis situation. And also that is what we have discussed in the morning. And also let's continue. And also when you come to the functions of the government, Richard Musgrave, he has identified 3 main functions for the government. I think still these functions are valid. This budgetary function, allocation of money from the budget concern, right? And also there's a role. First function, allocative function, we have discussed in the morning. And also allocation is a must allocation function, because government will have to provide social good, right? Because social good, we know that public security, national defense, then public road, etc. Because there's pure public good. like, national defense, etc. There is no, demand in the market. No one is going to pay because that good we have identified two important characteristics that we have discussed under public good, non-rivalry and non-excludability. Because of that, there is no market to provide such good. Then the government will have to provide. If the government is going to provide, because government will have to have resources, because government should have money. Then money is to be generated through taxation, because people are not voluntary payers. Then of course government will have to, because but they are willing to use the public good, pure public good, or the social good. Then of course they have to pay in the form of taxation. So that is what we have discussed with regard to this allocation function. Then the second one, he has said distributive function. The society is economically, we know for sure that because of this mixed economic system where you market operation, we have seen because of the demand and supply, some people, some suppliers, the firm, they will become at the end because they will earn more profit, and also because of that, you could say they are becoming rich and richer. At the same time, you can see because the poor segment of society become poor and poorer. That's it. Because you can see inequality in society. Right? Because government cannot tolerate that, because the inequality, it was the intention of the government to intervene and solve that problem. Then how to solve? Because they have to, support the vulnerable group. We have discussed that also, vulnerable group. Then of course, with regard to give access to education, healthcare facilities, social protection, etc. Then of course, you can see a lot of, program that the government will have to carry out, right? For the poor people concerned. So therefore, government will have to perform this function, distribution function. The third one that Maslow has said, stability function, because that's the macroeconomic related matter, full employment and price level stability. That is to be, I think, basically that is again to be done through this both fiscal and monetary policy instrument, right? That is what we have discussed. We are discussing under these three functions proposed by Musgrave, right? Then, of course, you can see how to finance government provision of public good, right? Good and services. Let's say public good, government provision. Because the only government has two options, any government. Two options. One, to raise revenue through taxation. Other, through borrowing. If you look at our situation, maybe tax money, tax income is not sufficient to meet the total expenditure. Tax income will be about 9% of GDP as of now, right? Expenditure will be around 19% or 20% of GDP. You can see a vast gap between, the government revenue and expenditure, because government is compelled to meet the expenditure because government has to perform certain goods and services to the people concerned. Maybe salaries of the public servant, then of course maybe welfare facilities concerned, maintenance of public infrastructure, then of course maintenance of this loss-making public entities concerned. All these expenses, government will have to find money. Then of course, how to find money? Now of course you can see treasury bond, right? The internal borrowing, right? Internal borrowing, I think on a monthly or bi-monthly, you can see internal borrowing, right? Internal borrowing. There's no other, you can borrow externally because no one give loan to government now. Because of that taxation, of course, there is a problem. I think when the government is going to increase taxes, then of course the affected parties, especially people at the higher level, income earners, they are unhappy about that. Unhappy about that with regard to direct tax. You know, the protests now, they are being launching, right? So therefore, it's a problem, right? Borrowing, of course, there's a limit. And also, I am not so sure that if you follow the present agenda of the government, whether government will be able to get rid of the crisis situation. I have some reservation with regard to that. Sri Lanka government revenue is lesser than, we already know that, right? Taxation income, this figure may be somewhat old figure, but you know the current figure, 90%, 9% of the revenue of the GDP, and 19% of the expenditure of GDP, right? You can see. And also once you look at the, maybe in our, next slide, we can see what has happened with regard to the government income or the revenue and expenditure. I will make it a little bit bigger, then you can understand. Throughout the, if you look at the history, right, maybe from the period beginning from 1950, you can see, except 2 years, we have a negative balance, right? Except 2 years, that is, I think, 1954 and 1955. You can see I have marked that with a round over here, right? Apart from those 2 years, I think almost all the period we have had a negative balance, right? Negative balance, right? You can see that's been expenditure was high and also income was less, right? That's the situation we have had, right? I think throughout the period, you can see that a minus sign before the figure. You can see last column, and also you can see the difference. We have, because you can look at the central bank annual report. This I have figures up to 2018, right? So that's the situation in Sri Lanka. Because, but here, of course, you can see I have marked them separately in up to 1977, 78 period. Of course, it was not a big issue. You can see sudden increase in 1978. You can see the gap has been minus 12 in 1978, because by that time we have the open, we have followed the open economic system, open market system, and also then of course country was open to the world. At the same time, government had decided to embark on many projects, maybe agricultural development project at that time, and also government had borrowed heavily. That's why you can see a single figure up to this deficit side. Of course, you can see single figure up to 1977. Then of course you can see double figure over here, the 12% or something like that. And when you look at, you can see the continuation, except some years, 1990, and of course, again, you can see up to about 1999, single figure again, and also except a couple of years in between, you can see single figure. Then, of course, you can see increase, right? Increase of this situation. And again, of course, you can see the change in pattern sometime after maybe about 2000 in the year 2000, and after that you can see again, you can see single figure concern, right? That's a gap between expenditure and income, right? A gap, because that's the negative balance you could see. So that's the situation, because maybe then of course you can see some countries, of course, they used to borrow about 250% of their GDP. Have you heard of that? Some countries of the world, they have borrowed, especially Japan. They used to borrow heavily, about 250% of their GDP, right? Then, of course, you may question, then, of course, because the World Bank and IMF, they have set a norm to say that, upper limit that where you can borrow is 75% of your GDP. If you pass that, then, of course, the debt sustainability will be a problem. You will not be able to pay back, right? We have passed that limit, I think, maybe during the last few years concerned, and that's a problem. But in the meantime, you can see some countries, especially Japan, I think, for example, they used to borrow about 250% of GDP. Why? But they don't have any crisis situation. They can manage that. How is that? What's the difference? But we find it very, we have passed the limit of 120. Now I think We have passed the limit 120 of our GDP. We have borrowed up to that point. Then, of course, now we are facing crisis situation. But in the case of Japan, when they borrow, they have been borrowing around 250 for a couple of some time, but they don't have that problem. Why? What's the problem with regard to that? How do we try to interpret this? Anyone knows that? No idea?
The foreign reserves?
No, it is not. No, that is not the direct answer to the question. They are borrowing internally, right? They can, if you borrow internally, it's not a problem, right? Because they are using yen, right? They borrow, but they are not going to borrow from the international market, right? They are not borrowing from other countries concerned, right? They borrow internally. Then, of course, they can print in and settle the amount, right? That is what is called by this MMT. I think to that extent, maybe they are using that instrument, MMT instrument. It's not a problem. They can borrow and settle that because that is internal. Internal. It's not an issue. That's the answer because they are not borrowing external, right? So that's the answer to that question, right? Okay. When you look at the Sri Lankan situation, even if you look at figures for 2019 and the 2020, of course, you can see a projected figure 2020, you can see expenditure side is very high, maybe almost double all the time. You can see about here, if you look at figures over here, more sometimes double of the revenue side, and also expenditure is very much higher, right? That's the situation we could see. And also maybe our tax base is very small, because maybe some people are getting concession, right? Maybe especially foreign investors. Foreign investors, they get because they are getting concession. Otherwise, they won't come and invest over here because our input are really expensive. Electricity, labor, then other facilities, they're very expensive because of the concession, the duty concession. And then, of course, maybe they are coming over here to invest. But if we are going to remove that concession, then there will be a problem of getting investors concerned, because you have to see that, right? Maybe some people are talking about concession. But again, of course, concession, how long we are going to offer that concession? Because we have longer concession period, maybe about 10 years or 15 years concern. I think that is too much. That is too much. So you have to be very reasonable because of we have this revenue problem, because some other we have to fill the gap, and also how to fill, you have to increase production, and also you have to produce for the external export market. So that's the problem we have over here. Right. Composition of government revenue. You can see that how to get government revenue from various sources. You can see import duties, then VAT, and other taxes, income tax, and excise duties concerned. That is how now those are source of our income, right? Income, revenue, right? And also non-taxable, because you can see profit and dividend, a very negligible amount. If you look at the right side, that is not that important according to 2020 figures. Of course, that's not important, right? Non-taxable revenue about 11%, tax revenue about 89%, right? Percentage wise. Then, of course, current expenditure, right? Composition of government current expenditure. Of course, you can see because government has to carry out certain program. Maybe at the same time, you have to pay the loan with interest concern. It's a bigger component over here. Now, of course, there's a temporary hold over here because maybe in time to come, maybe after a few years' time, of course, we have to pay back the loan with interest concern. Then, of course, by that time, of course, we will feel the heat of the situation concern. Then transfer to public institution concern, because we have large number of loss-making entities concerned, then of course government will have to decide. Maybe few government institution enterprises, they are making profit, like insurance, then of course telecom, etc. They are making profit. And also at the same time, like Sri Lankan Air and also railway, electricity board, etc. They are making heavy losses. Then of course how to restructure, because maybe sometime of course you can find management issues. Management issues. We know for sure that maybe those institutions, you have to look at the expenditure side. I know personally that maybe electricity board, then the petroleum corporation, their pay structure for the staff is very high, right? In some, I think, I can't remember petroleum corporation, I think petroleum corporations or electricity board, they have about a lot of what we call incentive scheme, about 29 odd incentives for various activities. I was told that in the case of electricity board, meter reader is also given incentive because his job is reading meters, right? Because there is no any other. But why should they give incentive to readers, meter readers concern? Likewise, lot of incentives. Maybe it is very much higher than their salary concern. So because they have to look at the expenditure side, because in a crisis situation, at least for the time being, for a couple of years, of course, they have to manage the expenditure. If that is the case, of course, then you can reduce the burden of the treasury, right? Otherwise, treasury you have to allocate, because that's why transfer of public institution and corporation sector about 4%, and also out of those government revenue, you have to. And other goods and services about 7%. And also salaries and about 30% of the sizable amount. Sizable amount of the budget is to be allocated for salaries and wages plus interest payment. Those are the issues. And also, then when you look at transfer household, about certain payment to be done, and also fertilizer subsidies, of course, Amurdi, about pension. Then if you look at salaries and pension, about 40%, right? And other payment 10%. That's the situation, because maybe government can't simply manage the expenditure side, right? Expenditure side, but government will have to, right? Look at, because there are two ways. On the one hand, you have to increase the revenue side. On the other hand, you have to look at properly manage the expenditure side as well. Right. Then, of course, outstanding central bank government debt for the as at the end of the year, because up to I think some years you can see 2017, 2018, 2019, and also 20, you can see how much government revenue, and also debt. Also you can see internal and external borrowing. Internal borrowing in the last column. First, I have marked internal borrowing about this in million about 9 million. 9 million, yeah, 9 million, you can see. Then, of course, you can see the, then, of course, external borrowing about 6 million, 6 million, right? You can see how much, because that is why this is the amount we have said 91 million US dollars in internal and external borrowing. External borrowing about 42 billion, and the balance is internal borrowing, right? That's the situation, right? That's the situation we have. Then, of course, we can see production possibility curve, because when you are going to provide goods and services to people, then, of course, you find different economy, different countries, of course, they have different way of providing, goods, right? Central economy, the central economic questions over here: what is to be produced, how it is to be produced, and for whom it is to be produced, and how are these decisions made, right? These are the questions to be answered. What is to be produced, that is to be decided. That should be decided by the market on the basis of demand and supply, and also how that is also based on the market demand, and also then whom it is to be produced, by the government or the market concern, right? And also how these decisions are made. That's the problem, right? Then, of course, what is to be produced, you can say allocation of resources between public sector and private sector, right? Maybe in the case of developed countries, they can decide, they can rely more on the private sector because they have a very competitive, well-developed market, right? But in the case of developing countries like ours, of course, we don't have a well-developed market. Our market is a failure. Maybe now, of course, both government is also a failure, market is also a failure, right? We are a failed country, right? But allocation of resources between public sector and the government, public sector and the private sector, that should be done, right? When you want to make produce certain good, government to produce, because everybody knows that government is to produce pure public good or the social good, right? We have seen, we have discussed that in our previous discussion as well. The private sector, private good, right? Like cars, TVs, etc., consumer good by the consumers concern, right? Consumers concern. And society can spend more on public good by reducing what is available for private consumption. That's mean when the society can spend more on public good, that's mean society, citizen will have to pay more taxes. If you are going to pay more taxes, then of course your private consumption will be getting less. So that's the problem we have, right? That is, I think that is why maybe these professional, they are maybe university teachers, doctors, engineers, professional group, that means higher level salaried people. They are lamenting now, say that because their private consumption has negatively affected because of this higher taxation, right? 30 to 36%, etc. Because they have this taxation, their policy has upset their way of life, because maybe if they have planned their life, maybe for the next 5 years or something like, maybe they have borrowed money from the bank or the lending agency is concerned. They have started construction of their houses. They have to look at their children education, etc. They have a planned budget because they are depending on their salary income. When the government is going to take part of that income with the view to increase government revenue, then of course they have to suffer because their private consumption, they have to cut down because they find it very difficult to cut down. I think some people have given examples saying that our take-home salary about 20,000, something like that. With 20,000, of course, you can't survive if that is the income for the family. Because it is government has said already declared saying that one person should have about 17,000 rupees for survival. That means for their basic need to meet their basic 17,000. If a professional, after paying all the taxes, the loan, etc., then of course, if they are having only about 20 or 20,000, 25,000 rupees, how can they survive? That's the problem. And also, I don't say that they are leaving the country at the moment is justifiable, but of course, for them, if you look at from their side, there's no solution to the problem. That's why they have made this sudden decision, because I think earlier, of course, you don't see that government people, maybe professional doctors, engineers, etc., IT guys, they are leaving the country. Once they are in the country, they are employed in the public sector, there had been attraction in the public sector because of the pension, right? Because even salaries are comparatively low, but since there is a social security, government has guaranteed their pension. Now they don't believe in that. They don't rely on that. That's why they have decided, because some professional, they have vacated the job. Not that they have taken leave. They have vacated the job because they are really disgusted with the government policy. Because maybe tax over whether they can afford to pay. Because you have to look at that. You need because that is what the World Bank has said, the IMF has said, we didn't tell you how to raise the revenue, but only thing you have to increase government revenue. That is what they have said. Because maybe government too has only limited option, unless they have a well-designed plan to expand the economy, they can't increase government revenue. Because it's taxing the people. Maybe private sector or the government sector, you can't solve the problem because because you have to expand the tax base. How to do that? Increase productivity, then expand economy. Then of course you can expand the tax base as well. That's how they have to do. So those are the issues we have with regard to this production related issue. Then, of course, production possibility curve, public good versus private good. You can say public good, if you want to provide more public good, then, of course, you have to have more revenue. The private, if the market is going to provide more good, private good, then, of course, you have to reduce this side and allow these people to provide. This could be a combination. It could be either B point or either C point, A point or B point. Those are the equilibrium point, right? And also, if you look at C point is under provision, right? Under provision. C point under provision because you are not providing sufficient amount of public good or private good, right? Then how it is to be produced, whether produced by the private sector or the government sector, right? Whether labor intensive or capital intensive, because there are options available for you to go ahead with. And whether apply energy efficient technology or impact of government regulation, such as labor laws, environment protection, and also regulation regulation of payroll tax, etc. Because government regulation, because if you want to attract investors, of course, you have to change the existing labor law. That's what labor ministry has been trying, but maybe labor union are unhappy about that, right? Because I think that the employees are protected by our labor's concern. That has been hindrance for the investors, foreign investors to come because they want to hire and fire policy. But existing law does not allow that to occur. Those are the issues we have. Whether firms are encouraged or discouraged by the regulation concern, right? Attraction of FDI. Or I think I said that with regard to SME issues concerned, maybe government policy, right? Government policy to have higher interest rate. If that is the policy, of course, you can't say encourage. There is a discouragement for the SME people. SME people are the people who could expand the economic activities, right? Not the government. Government can't do that, right? That because that what he has said, business is the engine of the growth. That's true. But of course, if that is the case, it's up to the government to support the private sector, right? Private sector. Whatever the possibilities, they have giving access to credit, that means capital, and also they have to look at the other facilities concerned. Maybe they have to have they have to import certain raw material and equipment concern where there cannot be any restriction on them. If that is the case, of course, how can they produce? Maybe even credit is available at a reasonable interest rate, but access to other intermediate item, right? For the production process, if they don't get access to that, they can't do that because government has to have a kind of macro view with regard to a private sector role, right? Okay. Then for whom it is to be produced? This is a question of distribution, how to distribute, right? Taxation and welfare policies will decide how much income individuals have to spend, right? Taxation, heavy taxes, less income for their consumption, right? Then of course, welfare policies, okay. If you have uh, 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 increased taxation policy, at the same time, you have to provide welfare facility. That means education, healthcare, social protection, etc. That is why some of the Eastern European countries, like Scandinavian countries, they have heavy taxation, right? Maybe about 40 to 50% your personal income you have to pay, right? At the same time, you get very good social welfare program, education, healthcare, then of course other social protection, etc. at the government expense. They don't mind paying heavy taxes because they are going to get benefit out of that, right? Government will decide what public good to produce because up to the government. That's mean public good, pure public good we are referring to. Maybe sometime, of course, semi-public good like government has to decide. Maybe government wrong investment decision. I would say that wrong investment decision by the government in the past few decades has pushed has pushed the country into this economic chaotic situation concern, right? That maybe you can say that COVID-19 and this maybe April incident has expedited the problem. Those are the immediate reason. If you look at the other reason, gradual approaching toward this disastrous destination is the wrong investment decision. Maybe we have borrowed heavily, right? We have borrowed heavily, but we don't know how to use that borrowed money for the production purposes, right? But we have, maybe you can't say that maybe investment is good for the country, for the people who are going to get benefit out of that, but not good for the investors. That mean government has to be mindful about their investment. Then because maybe if you are going to invest maybe in ventures which do not give benefit immediate, so maybe you have to earn benefit in the form of foreign currency like stadia, then of course maybe conference hall, then this monumental value like Nelum Kuruna, etc. It won't help you earn foreign currency at all, right? Maybe even in the case of this Hambantota harbor, it is very much because it's not a viable investment program, right? Better to have a very profitable investment program. You could have expanded one terminal in Colombo harbor, right? Maybe instead of now, of course, you could see that the Hambantota harbor, you have to sell it to China. Even in the case of Colombo harbor, you have CICT. This Colombo CI Colombo International Terminal, CICT, right? Container terminal, because that's owned by is a kind of, you can say, PPP, Ports Authority on 15% of share. And also we can discuss that later because we are going to have public-private partnership for the time being. And also and then Chinese firm has 85%. Instead of constructing this Hambantota harbor, you would have expanded Colombo harbor, and also to handle computers. Terminal concern, container terminal. Then of course you have borrowed foreign currency. Then of course you are going to earn foreign currency through this container handling business, right? That could have been more profitable than having a new hub, because you have to work out. I said when you are going to have a policy problem, I said, in our second discussion, of course, you have to identify alternative. Which one will answer your problem? If you have a problem, you have a problem of earning foreign currency. If you want to borrow and you have to invest with the view to earning foreign currency. So you could have done that, because I think the expansion of the terminal in Colombo Harbor is a very viable business, right? We have several terminals over here. We'll discuss when we are going to discuss the public-private partnership, right? Then how are these choices made, right? Investment decision, right? Then the production decision. Choices for public good are made collectively in society, right? Public good, because since there is no demand, then of course people still want maybe national security or public security. Then of course they have to enjoy the benefit collectively, and also that's the collective decision of the people in society. Then of course legal structure, right? Size of the military establishment, etc., right? That is to be taken into consideration. Individual decision by the consumers concerned, firm, investment, right? Choices. Then of course collective decision making is rather difficult and complex, because the people do not agree, because there is no voluntary contribution by, because saying that because now we are in a very bad situation economically, we have declared bankruptcy, we have to get rid of that problem. I think our people are not going to sympathize with the situation concerned. They attribute this situation to some segment of our decision makers, right? They have made this situation. This not somewhat this didn't happen because of something like natural disaster. If that's the case, of course, people will sympathize and tolerate and voluntarily contribute. Now, of course, people do not vote, right? People are unhappy, right? Then, of course, it's not that easy to make collective decision, right? And also, decision on the public goods are in the best interest of the people concerned. Public good. That means whatever the investment that government is going to make, because these are public interest is very important, right? For the benefit of the people concerned, right? Because investment, again, you have to do when you are going to make public decision with regard to public good, well, you have to look at this aspect, public interest, right? And it is important for us to understand who will benefit and who will be harmed by the given policy. Because maybe sometime, of course, you have to say this Pareto efficiency, of course, over here, because maybe you have to, get benefit at the expense of somebody, worse situation, right? That is how you could say that, because that is to be, because maybe the benefit side is more than the, harm side, worse side, right? If that's the case, of course, we have to make that decision. Then the market and the government intervention in order for the market to function efficiently. That's what I said, Pareto efficient. The government will have to define property right, because it's a domain for the government to protect the property of the people concerned. And enforcement of contract. Again, of course, maybe otherwise private sector, they find it very difficult. If there's no guarantee for their property and also enforcement of contract, then of course the private sector find it very difficult to operate in a country like that. Then Pareto efficiency, we mean there is no one, one can get better off without someone being worse off. That's what Pareto efficiency. That means because someone is getting better at the expense of some other people over here. That's what they say. That is why we have discussed previously also this unequal society. That's why government had to have this distributed allocation, of course, because of inequality in society. Rich people will become richer, while the poor people, vulnerable groups, they will become poorer and poorer. Because government intervention, if that is the case, government intervention is required by way of this distribution function. Government is required to intervene when market fail. So another difficulty, because maybe we have noticed in some countries, developed countries, from time to time, market failure because of recession, because of depression, because of collapse of some firms concerned, we have seen. But in addition to that, we have seen market failure and government intervention, failure in competition, because if you don't have competitive market, if you want to operate good market, you have to promote competition. It is only then consumers get benefit. And innovation is there in the economy, right? Innovation in the economy because government, all right. There's a competition. Through competition, of course, the firms will try to produce, goods at a low cost and increase their profit, right? Because they have to compete other firms. So then, of course, they have to find innovative ways of doing that. They want to stay in the market. They want to earn more profit, right? Because if that competition is not there, we consider such a market is a failure market, right? Failure in competition. And failure to provide public good by market, because we know for sure that when you come to public good, pure public good, there's no market, there's no demand. Yeah, because you can't identify the unit, you can't do that, right? Therefore, because once the good is available for one consumption, others can also consume. You can't restrict, right? Likewise, there's no market for public good. And also because of the externalities. Because externality, of course, you find both positive externality as well as negative externality. When you come to education, we have discussed positive externalities in our previous discussion. Benefit to society, not to the person who consume, not to the person who provide, but other party, third party is going to get benefit. That's what we call positive externality. And also spillover effect. And also negative, it could be the negative side as well. Maybe because of the firms and the consumers, they are enjoying the product of the firm concerned. But maybe the production done by the firm will pollute the environment, because the firm is not going to rectify that. Even the consumers are not going to rectify that, because that is to be, then of course somebody will have to intervene to rectify that, because it's the government which has to intervene. That's why we call negative external, like environmental pollution, water pollution, then of course you can say air pollution, sound pollution, various forms of negative impact, you could say, with regard to this firms activities concerned. Then incomplete market, maybe sometime of course you don't find, sometime the market is not covered the entire area concerned. In some areas of course goods are not provided, and also maybe the providers are, the firms are not there, then of course a lot of issues are there. In that case of course you can see market failure. Stability in the economy, as in the case of Sri Lanka, stability, because maybe unemployment has increased, then of course prices are going up, that's inflation concern. If that is the case, stability will become a problem. Then of course you can have perfect competition. Perfect competition, because the market, that's what we want to say. If you look at the perfect competition, that's what we want to have in the market, right? Then of course you can say demand and supply, many firms and many consumers over there. Then you can see the operation or mechanism to operate market, and also then that is what we call invisible hand, and also monopoly. If the market is dominated by one firm or one family, right? You can say monopoly, maybe few firms or few families concerned, monopoly and oligopoly, right? Maybe in the case of rice market in Sri Lanka, you can say oligopoly, few millers, they are dominating the market from time to time, and also natural monopoly. Natural monopoly may be because of the uh, strategy used by one firm. They can contribute to repeal the other small competitors concerned, because in the long run maybe the big firm will stay, because maybe if they want to price in their product, of course the same. If they are producing, maybe the small firms and the big firm produce the same product, then of course what the big firm could do is to reduce the price, because for a short time. Then of course if that is the case, of course small firm, they can't do that. Then of course if they are going to reduce, of course they have to stop their business. So that by that way, of course some big firm, they can manipulate the market and also have the natural monopoly. Those are the things that we have to discuss. Then provision of public good. Pure public good, we have discussed enough when we were talking about public good. Then of course market and pure public good. Market does not provide pure public good. That should be provided by the government. Government intervention is a must in that case. Will the market provide pure public good? No, answer is no, right? That is to be provided by the government, right? The responsibility of the government. Who should provide merit good, education, etc.? We have discussed separately, and also education is to be because of the external benefit to society. That is again to be provided either by the government or the market concern. Market, of course, you have to pay. Government may be free or at a reasonable price. Then externalities, of course, we have discussed. Negative externalities, air pollution, environmental pollution, and firms by firms in the market. Harmful effect on society. Positive externalities, education, healthcare facilities, etc. Benefit to society. Why should government intervene in providing education? Right? We have discussed that also. You can say incomplete market, you can say certain services will not be provided by the market. For example, maybe agricultural insurance, because agriculture sector is very vulnerable, high risk area. Then of course government will have to give a guarantee, right? In the case of agricultural insurance, high risk area, because incomplete market. Then of course imperfect capital market, government will have to again give, because student loan, etc. Maybe financial institutions are reluctant to give student loan because maybe sometimes interest rate concern. Loan promote business engage to engage in international trade, right? Sometimes, of course, government will have to give guarantee. Complementary market, because complementary market, because some item is connected with another item, coffee and sugar, right? Because coffee is produced, of course, you have to encourage sugar production, because coffee and sugar will go to coordination by the government, because how much coffee is cultivated and how much sugar is cultivated. Otherwise, if you are not providing sufficient sugar, then of course there is no market for coffee as well. Likewise, you can see. Then information failure, another problem we have in the market failure. Supply information to customers concerned. Sometimes, of course, maybe firms or the supplier do not provide sufficient information, right? Sometimes back, of course, we had the problem. That's why I have cited the example. Cooking gas issue, because sometimes inferior quality gas was provided by Litro and the other, LAF, provider, right? Then, of course, because of that, there had been explosion, right? Maybe explosion of the gas can or the cooker concern, and also many casualties were there. Then, of course, that is because government, the provider, that's been firm, has deliberately diluted gas. That's mean inferior quality. That was detected. But of course, I don't think that the government has taken any action, because one is the government provider, that Litro means government provider. Even other one, LAF is a private sector provider, right? And also labeling, maybe information of the product concerned, because the content of the product, like sugar level, then of course maybe other vitamin, etc., that is to be clearly indicated for the benefit of the consumers concerned. Now you can see some food drink, of course, you can see sugar level with different colors concerned, right? Green color, then the yellow color, red color, etc. You can see. And also government regulation with regard to certain areas, right? Government can impose regulation even with regard to this content of the food drink, of course, that's government regulation. And also sometimes government can impose regulation to curtail maybe pollution, etc. Government can impose regulation, right? Information such item as public good, right? Because public goods, of course, maybe not pure public good. Of course, this public good, maybe government can impose regulation to give information to the consumers concerned. Then unemployment, inflation, and disequilibrium. Then, of course, unemployment as a market failure during recession. We have discussed that in relation to what Keynes has said, Milton Friedman has said. Of course, we have discussed with it because that's the situation where we have the crisis in the economy. It's a market failure. And demand from education, demand from educated unemployed. That's what graduate in Sri Lanka, right? Then another problem, right? Because that's mean our education system has produced unemployable graduate, right? Because it doesn't mean that the quality-wise, problem, but not the quality-wise problem, because job market requirement and the graduate competencies are not matching, right? That's why we had that problem. And also ultimately what has happened, they such graduate are to be absorbed to government workforce, and also that also another contributory factor to increase the work population in the government sector. And then government intervene with new policies, right? You can see during the past government, of course, they have different programs to address the issue concern. Enterprise Sri Lanka, earlier, loan subsidies to and lowering lending rate by central bank during the period of Yapana government, of course, you can see 2015 to 2019, and vistas of prosperity. That's been the program of the previous president concerned. Then, of course, present government 10 key policy areas to, make policies and implement by the new government, and success and sustainability of such policies, right? If you look at some of those policies with regard to inflation, with regard to this equilibrium, you can say that some issues, some of the issues, maybe the first 2 years, of course, government has miserably failed, right? Sustainability, you can't talk about sustainability, fail, because the government has failed, the market has also failed because of the other intervening factors concerned. That's what we have to discuss with regard to government and the market concern. If you have any questions, you can take it up for discussion. If not, we can move on to the next session, right? Next sessions on, yes, decentralized government. Any questions or any point to be further elaborated with regard to government and market? Yes or no? Everybody silent.
No, sir, clear, everything clear.
Okay. Then decentralized government. We are going to have.
Sir, can you please share these slides in
Yeah, I can.
LS?
I'll send it to the department, and they will put into their LMS, and then that can be done. I'll do it. Yeah. Then the decentralized government, there could be two sessions. One, the practical aspect of Sri Lankan situation, or the operational aspect of Sri Lankan situation with regard to decentralized government, and also conceptual aspect. In the first session, we are going to today discuss conceptual aspect of decentralized government. In a way, it's a political concept, right? But this to be covered in, this is what we are going to cover in this discussion. Meaning of decentralization, form of decentralization, that's basically political aspect, and also fiscal federalism, that's what we are going to put more emphasis on that, fiscal federalism. Then, of course, allocation of provision of public good under different tiers of the government under fiscal federalism. And also TBAU model, provision of public good at local level, and also advantage and disadvantage of fiscal federalism. Those are the area. First, of course, some point for you to understand the concept of decentralization from the political science of political science view. Then, of course, balance is, of course, public finance view. Right. What is decentralization? This is a form of government, right? But
So excuse me, sir, we can't. Your news slides are not visible. We can see only the
I
last
know the problem
previous
because
slide.
I didn't share it. Right. Which one is that? Yeah. Now, can you see now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me go back. Right. Decentralized government concept, and also you can see the content in the presentation, meaning of decentralization, form of decentralization, fiscal federalism, allocation of provision of public good under different tiers of the government, that's under fiscal federalism. And TBAU model is pronounced TBAU, right? TBAU model, and provision of public good at local level, advantages and disadvantages of fiscal federalism, right? Then, of course, decentralization, I said, is a political concept, right? It's a form of government, but no uniformity in structure. That means different countries have different form of decentralization, right? Maybe, for example, our country, you can say that maybe after 1987, Sri Lanka is not a unitary state. Maybe our constitution says it's a unitary state. But when you look at the structure, it's not a unitary state. Unitary state, you can have only one decision-making center for the country, right? Up to 1987, we had only one decision-making center, high-level decision. That's Colombo, right? Now, after establishment of the Provincial Council under 13th Amendment to the Constitution, we have another 9 decision-making centers, right? Maybe Provincial Council government, provincial government, because they too can make decision with regard to subject devolved on them, right? About 37 subjects that we will discuss in the second discussion, right? Not today, right? That situation we could say. Because therefore, maybe conceptually we can't say that ours is a unitary government. Maybe constitution you can say, but in practice it's not a centralized government. It's a decentralized government, right? Decentralized political decentralization, right? Then you can find different form of decentralization, right? Decentralization. Maybe in the case of the United States, a unique decentralization, because what is happening normally in the case of decentralization, center used to decentralize its power, giving powers to subnational or local level unit in the form of maybe local government or the provincial government. Right. When you look at the United States situation, which was formed in 1776, right? Maybe 2 centuries ago, right? Little over 2 centuries ago. At that time, there was no government called the United States of Government, right? They had only state government. About state government, because they had a independent war, because they want to get rid of the British rule, because it was a British colony prior to 1776, right? It was a British colony, and also they have independent state, right? What has happened in the latter part of the 18th century, this independent state, 13 states got together and fought the British, the colonial rule, and they chased them out of the country, right? Then, of course, after winning the war, it's called Civil War, right? The war against the British Empire, right? Not the Civil War, right? British Empire. Then, of course, there was a question. Although these leaders of the 13 states, they got together to fight. Then, of course, there was a question. Suppose that if there is another foreign invasion, because foreign powers were there, because Dutch, Portuguese, Belgium, then of course Portugal, then of course Portuguese, then Dutch, all the people, because Spain, because Western, the European powers, because they had colonies. They know for sure that, because there could be even French, there could be foreign invasion. Then how to face foreign invasion? And also internally also there are they need the system, right, to coordinate among these 13 state or other state concerned. Then use of common currency, transaction, promote trade, etc. Then interstate transport. Likewise, they had the problem, right? Then of course the leaders, they have had a discussion, like what we call they exchange views through Federalist papers, right? Federalist papers, and also they were thinking of creating a structure above the state government level, right? With certain function assigned to that structure, right? Maybe national security, foreign relation, then the currency, that means currency for trade transaction, right? Then of course interstate affairs, railways, etc. Certain defined function to be given to this upper structure. That means structure created above the state government, which is called the United States of America. That is how this federal government was formed in the United States. But in the case of other federal government, maybe center has given certain powers to lower level. That means subnational level and local level. That is how many a time ago, that is what has happened in Sri Lanka, and also what has happened in many other federal government, right? But federal government in the United States is quite different from other federal government. right? I think that's a good example. The results of the devolution of power within the unitary state, right? And also, there's been unitary state, that's been descending or holding together as a federation, right? That means you have to keep the state together, right? That means you can't say that it's a unitary government, but you have to keep the country together. Large countries especially, they find it very difficult to have a centralized government like India, Canada, Australia, etc. Even in the case of USA, of course, they have to have the centralized government will not cater to the need of the people concerned. So therefore, they have to look for another form of government. That is what called decentralized government, right? Federal form of government, right? India, of course, India, they have been very careful not to use the word federal, right? Federal. They are not using anywhere in their constitution. They haven't used the word federal. They call union government, union government of India, right? Union Bank of India, union government of. They have used the word union, right? Union government of India. Maybe because of the may some influence from Soviet Union at that time, because then the Soviet Union, because there's a kind of formation of a government as a union, right? Maybe I don't know that I suspect that, right? Maybe Sri Lanka is also, you could say, because of the Indian influence, Sri Lanka also, as you can find, as a kind of the intention behind to keep the territorial integrity. India also you find territorial integrity, right? Indian and Sri Lankan, you have that form of government, decentralized form of government. And also when you look at again political concept, decentralization involve shifting of political power. That's been political structure like state government or the provincial government or the provincial council. That's been you find the political authority pass on to the second tier. Then of course administrative. You can only not the ones who have political decision making authority, they are fully independent in that case, because with regard to their affair, they can manage their own affair. That's what we call devolution. Devolution. Then administrative, that's an arrangement or management. That's the administrative division. Devolution and administrative decentralization, two different concepts. Devolution, then of course constitution will say how to make any change, right? Because in this federal government or dual system of government, special procedure to be followed if you want to make any change. For example, if you look at Sri Lanka, if you want to make this structure, maybe provincial council system or powers given to the provincial council concerned, then of course you have to follow the procedure, special procedure laid down in the constitution concerned. That is to have a two-third majority of all members in parliament and place that proposal before people to vote. If that is passed with two-third majority and referendum, then of course you can go ahead with the changes that you want to make. That's a kind of political decentralization, right? Then of course political power. Then administrative, of course, that is with the view to running the country, right? Managing the country. That means that you are giving certain administrative powers to the next hierarchy, next level of the organization concerned, maybe provincial level, district level, village level, etc. Is any time you can take that authority back to the center concerned. Then the fiscal, that means imposing taxes, right? That means imposing taxes. That authority can also be given to lower level concern. Responses from higher level to lower level of government, right? Either way, right? You can have political decentralization, you can have administrative decentralization, you can have fiscal decentralization. This is why, right? Then of course, type of decentralization according to World Bank, right? they have identified 4 types of decentralization. Again, fiscal decentralization, political decentralization, administrative decentralization, and economic market decentralization. The first 3, of course, I have already explained. The last one, economic or market decentralization, means privatization. That means transfer of the ownership of the government agency, government enterprises, public enterprises, private sector. That means through selling them, right? That is what that's that market or then the market will provide such services thereafter. So those are the 4 forms of decentralization that World Bank has classified. Then if you look at the world situation, of course, you can say developing countries, of course, you can see world situation when you come to economy. Of course, I think this is not very much relevant to you. I think this is something in another presentation. This country concern, developing countries, revenue concern, expenditure this much, and of course, transitional countries, that's been this former countries under Russian Union. That's cost OECD countries about 19%. China, of course, but that's not direct relevant over here. Then, of course, you can see decentralization. Then, of course, you can see federal countries, right? Federal countries, of course, you can say decentralization means shared rule in some areas and self-rule in other areas, right? Self-rule with regard to dual unit, right? Maybe state government or provincial council. Then, of course, in the case of Sri Lanka, it's quite different because they have the authority to manage their own business within the, this dual unit, right? Dual unit. That's what we call this self-rule, right? Self-rule. Shared rule, when you come to national level, of course, you have the representative of the self-control unit. Then they are working together. Shared rule, that's called shared rule. Some areas and self-rule in other areas based on democratic consensus, right? That's the political arrangement again. In the case of USA, Philadelphia Convention, 1787, the birth of the United States, right? As I explained to you, that's the beginning because that's a convention, and also they have ratified the convention in that year. And also no single model for federalism. When you look at federalism, we have different forms of federalism. And also federal constitution and the constitutional court and referendum are important aspect of federal government, right? Constitutional court, federal constitution, because constitution is very important because it will tell you what to do and what not to do, right? Constitutional, any dispute with regard to the implementation of the constitution to be interpreted by the constitutional court. In our situation, that is to be done by the Supreme Court, right? Supreme referendum, of course, I discussed it previously. Then, of course, our main subject, I have given you a preamble with regard to decentralization. Then, of course, now we are coming to the core subject area of decentralization. That is fiscal federalism. Fiscal federalism. That's a concept of multi-level of government, right? Because maybe this is basically with regard to federal form of government. Federal form of because you have multi-level or multi-tiers of the government. That means maybe sometimes we have 2 tiers. Many times in the case of federal government, you have 3 tiers. What are those 3 tiers? Maybe federal government or the central government, then the state government or the provincial government, then the local government, USA, Canada, and Sri Lanka. That's why that is the reason for me to argue that Sri Lanka is a federal country, right? Because you have the central government over here, although we are not using the word central, it's a government at the center. And of course, we have the provincial government, although we are not using the word government, we call provincial council, but they have delineated areas and also boundaries concerned, provinces concerned. Within that, of course, they have the sovereignty. They can, with regard to those subject given to them, they can manage, they can, administer those functions within their province, right? Then, of course, we have local government. Local government in our situation is not that powerful, right? But this structure you could see in the USA, India, and Sri Lanka, right? Then the level of decentralization. In federal countries, of course, you can see federal government and central government, and also state government and local government. In the case of Sri Lanka, of course, you can see government is not, there is no adjective to say, call that central government or the federal government. They say government, then the provincial government or provincial council and local government, right? That's a label we have over here. Then fiscal federalism definition by W.E. Ott. He has defined federalism, fiscal federalism. Fiscal federalism is concerned with the understanding which functions and instrument, right? Instrument are best centralized, that means to be kept with the center, and which function are best placed in the sphere of decentralized level of government. Because we have seen three-tier structure: center, subnational, or the state government or the local government. Then, of course, what is to be kept with the center, right? What function and instrument, and also what is to be given to the subnational or the local, the state government and the local government concern. That is how he has looked at the fiscal federalism. Then you can see David Hyman, right? But he has said division of taxing and expenditure function. The very direct definition, answer, right, to the question. Division of taxing and expenditure function among multi-level of government. Because basically those three level of government: central, subnational, and the local, right? There's a taxing and expenditure function. Then taxing means revenue raising function. Expenditure, how to meet the expenditure, right? That's what he has said. It's a very simple definition with regard to fiscal federalism. Then, of course, you can see concept was developed. I think previously also, I think we have come across this name by Richard Musgrave. I think developed and elaborated because in 1959 by Musgrave and Oates in 1972, respectively, the theory of fiscal federalism, the concept. They have developed the concept. And also the concern with division of public sector function and how to finance those functions, functions and finances in a logical way, right? Because there's a rationale behind that. That's why we are discussing this fiscal federalism, rational way to allocate function among these three tiers concerned, right? Multiple layers mean three tiers concerned. That's what King has said with regard to this definition, right? Concern the division of public sector function and finances in a logical way among multi-layers of the government concerned. Then, of course, Musgrave, and also what he has said, local government, according to this, division, local public good, local public good to be financed by user fee, user charges, and local taxes, property taxes, right? I think we know that property taxes. When you come to local authorities, of course, that is how they are going to provide certain goods and services to the people, and then how to provide, how to get revenue through taxation. That means local property tax and also user fee. Users will have to pay for the service concern. That's at local level. Then the one level up, that state level or the provincial level. In our situation, provincial council level. But you can't apply this concept in our situation because our allocation of function among three tiers is not in this logical way. The state level, what he has said, what Musgrave has said, that state public good financed by consumption tax. That means sale tax, right? So the state level, because they have to earn income or the revenue to provide such good, then of course that is to be generated through sale tax or consumption tax. And the highest level, federal level, right? Central level, You can say public good, because they are to provide maybe they have to have foreign relation, national security, interstate, transport. Then, of course, maybe dispute among the state concerned, federal courts, etc. Then, of course, they have to carry out certain, functions. For that matter, they have to, and also even some disparities among the state concerned, maybe this distributive function that previously discussed. And also, again, of course, here also, then, of course, center will have to raise revenue. How? Through income tax. You can see allocation of this taxation, right? You can see taxation, maybe local level, user fee and local taxes. Then state level, consumption tax or the sale tax. Then federal level, you find income tax, right? This is the logical way of assigning function, right? Or I don't know, maybe logical way of assigning taxes or any kind of function concern. The concept was developed in 1959, right? Then the traditional concept of fiscal federalism, right? Traditional concept of fiscal federalism considers how best to provide public goods and services at federal level, regional level or the state level and local level, how best to finance public good at subnational level, right? That's the logical way of looking at fiscal federalism. How best to finance hard budget constraint at subnational level, right? Because generation, the generation of revenue for the budget, right? Then, of course, how to provide need equalization between the region concerned, because any federal government, some regions are rich, some regions are average, some regions are comparatively, compared with other region concerned, poor. Their income is lesser than the other region concerned. Then, of course, it's up to the national government, central government, to meet the need of the poor region, poor state government, right? By way of, that is what we call need equalization, right? There's a system in the federal government. Even our government also, we have, even Indian government, the USA government, they have this need equalization program. Now, how to design a fiscal federal system that effectively stimulate economic growth, because the poor region needs support to come out of that level, and also expansion of their economic activities. That means stimulate economic growth. And also, what is the link between fiscal federalism and monetary union? Monetary union is not fiscal federalism, but in the case of European Union, you find monetary union, but fiscal federalism is more than that, Then public good at national level. You can say national level, what is to be provided, right? Public good at national level. You can see goods and services that could best be provided by the center, federal level, are defense, foreign affairs, currency, interregional infrastructure such as transport, telecommunications, railway, etc. Those are the services, good or services to be provided by the center, right? For that, they have to raise revenue through income tax, right? Income tax. Then function of macroeconomic stabilization, because that's the function of the center, and income redistribution, right? And should also be left with the central government, because the provincial government, they can't do that, right? Then, of course, the macroeconomic, that means this this control of unemployment and also price stability, that is also function for the center, right? Center, right? Stability function, right? And also income redistribution, again, also function for the center, right? Then, of course, you can see goods to be provided at subnational level, state government or provincial government level. Basic principles of the traditional fiscal federalism is that subnational government should have the ability to provide goods and services that match particular preferences of the people of that area. Need, that means that represent need of their people. That is the reason for them to have fiscal federalism or federal form of government, because the needs of the different region are different, right? Maybe because if you have a central government, right, centralized government, maybe once they are providing goods and services, that is applicable to the entire country, right? Entire country. Because you know that there is a joke to say that, when graduates and unemployed graduates, when they were recruited to government, a Buddhist monk was allocated to fisheries department, right? You know the functions of the fisheries department, right? Because uh, they are just, they are not looking at the functions of the organization and also allocation of resources for that, right? Buddhist monk can't do that because the Buddhist monk can't promote, although undergraduate school people are recruited. Buddhist monk should go to another department in which he could perform his function, like the Buddhist affairs or archaeology department, other department concerned. Because fisheries department, because their intention, their purpose is to promote fisheries. So that inadvertently it has happened, right? That, right? Then of course ability. Here of course you can say ability to provide goods and services that match the particular needs and preferences of the area of the people, right? Because that's how this federation has formed, and also different regions have come together, right? Because a different region, you can see maybe some areas they would like to have, they have potential for agriculture. Some area maybe fishing, some area tourism. And also if you have a common program, maybe some areas such program does not fit, does not fit to their requirement concern. Therefore, better to have this federal form of government. In some country, big countries, maybe USA, Australia, Canada, etc., they have that intention, right? And also, in other words, provision of public services should be located at the lowest level of the government, right? Lowest level of the government, because maybe certain services should be given to the, because users, lowest level of the government, right? Maybe if you have local government, I think you can't compare this concept with our local government over here. Our local government do not provide such services. If you compare local government of other countries, developed countries concerned, right? Then the public good at local level, provision of many services could best be left with the local government, local level. That's been healthcare, education, then of course police, fire protection, infrastructure facilities, etc. Because in our situation, of course, you don't have healthcare is to be provided by the, maybe subnational level and the national level. Education is also again subnational or national level, and the infrastructure to some extent, and also fire, maybe some local authorities. Colombo, Dehiwala, then of course maybe even Kote, of course there's a municipal council, of course, big one. They have the resources to have that kind of services to citizen of the area concerned. Likewise, you can see, but not all, right? Because there are disparities among the local authorities concerned, municipal council concerned, right? Then allocation of grant by the center on need based rather than size of the region, because a need, because how the criteria for allocation of certain program, because we have said that a poor region should be supported by the center. If that is the case, how to support, right? There is a system for that matter. There's a system for that matter. But many a time this allocation is based on some personal satisfaction or personal consideration of the politician concerned, because you find some inside deal even in the case of the United States. If the president want to get support from one particular province, they will allocate more money more project for such province. Then, of course, then such province, then because of the benefit they have got from the government or the president, then they will work with the president concerned, right? That is what we call public choice perspective, right? Because you get some benefit because you are also going to get some benefit from the others, right? That's kind of situation. Then, of course, another, I think we said when you come to public good, of course, you can, we said strict list had, identify another category of public good, that is international level public good, right? And also global environment, greenhouse effect, and international security, and knowledge, marginal cost of transferring knowledge is zero, right? And international economic stability, right? Because crisis in one area of the world will create crisis in other part of the world concern. Like that Russia and Ukraine war, because the war is between those two countries, and also that has negatively affected oil price and also grain price, etc. Right? You can see some sort of economic impact of the war concern. International that has problem with regard to international economic stability, right? International financial organization concern, right? Of course, you can see because that's called public good at international level that is to be provided. Then the revenue and expenditure at subnational level, that means state government level or the provincial government level. Average revenue of subnational government in the USA, right, is 42.4% of the total government revenue, right? If you do get the average, that means subnational government, state government revenue, 42% of the total government revenue. And the OECD countries, that means 24 countries of the developed world, right? They are the countries of average total revenue about 19.2, right? 19.2. And average spending of subnational government, right? The revenue is 42, expenditure, you can say 48.4% of the total expenditure. And OECD country is about 30.4%. You can see, because you can see how subnational government are going to be important, right? Expenditure and income side. That's why these figures are given over here. Then, of course, another concept over here, this T-Bow model, right? T-Bow, right? The pure theory of local expenditure, Charles T-Bow, 1950. Fairly an old concept, about 56 more than 70 years now. And also what it has, because preference revelation mechanism, because with regard to single country, right? Single country, of course, there is no ways to reveal your preferences. That Samuelson and Musgrave showed that in the case of public good, there is no mechanism to reveal preferences, right? Musgrave both are talking about preference revelation in a country, right? Because if there's whether you want to purchase certain things, of course, you have to buy within the country. Of course, you can't cross the border, maybe unless you have maybe European Union, of course, you can cross the border because they have certain relaxation with regard to inter-government travel. But other countries, of course, we can't. Now, of course, the situation has improved. Maybe by that time, of course, it was not like that. But you can, even now, you can move, right? You can move among the countries concerned. It's not, it's expensive, and also there's no facilities for that, right? And also, hence, public good cannot be produced at optimum quantities, because that public good means maybe security, school, maybe semi-public good or public good concern, and the facilities provided to people living in the community concern, that cannot be done because of that problem, right? And public good cannot be provided at maximum of the optimum quantity, right? That because that means providers, public good providers, that means the authorities are not aware the amount to be produced, right? That's why because there's a demand and supply principle does not work over there. But Tiba in 1956, he has argued that the situation of a country at centralized, in the case of centrally provided nationwide public good. That means like security or whatever, national security, etc. But certain goods and services provided locally. But there could be a different scenario with regard to such situation, right? But there is a mechanism for preference revelation in the case of state and local government level, right? Local government public good. When provision of such goods is decentralized to state and local government level, right? Local government level. Because that means you can move and look at the benefit of using such public good, right? Maybe state level or the local government level. Although people cannot move freely across the nation from country to country, but they can move within the country, right? They can do so across the jurisdiction of state and local government. Because within the country, of course, there's no restriction of movement. They can move, right? They can move. There's no problem, right? Therefore, what Tebow has proposed, he has argued that ability of individual to move across the jurisdiction, that means from state to state, local government to local government, or different localities concerned, produce market-like solution. Then, of course, you can see demand. And also, if the local authorities are smart enough, they can also provide such services. Demand and supply will work over there, right? Then, of course, market-like solution to local public good problem, right? Because maybe this situation again in a developed country, not a country like ours, right? Even he showed that inefficiency in public good provision came from two missing factors, right? Missing factor: shopping and competition. Shopping induces efficiency because you can shop around, and also even private market you can see, and because of that you can see price mechanism and also increase efficiency. Competition induce right price because firms will have to compete, right? That's what you could see in this shopping and competition. Right price and quantities in the private market. Then, of course, when you come to this public good also, you can say with public good provided at local level, competition naturally arises because individual can vote with their feet. That's the terminology he has used. Vote with their feet by moving from one location to another town, another location with much disruption, without much disruption. Because you can maybe from state to state, from locality to locality, then of course you can, that you are doing shopping, right? Vote with your feet mean you are doing shopping. Then of course you can, because once you meet your preferences, then you can consume that, right? This induces fiscal discipline, right? The of fiscal discipline means localities or the state government, they have to provide such services, right, for local government and create new preference revelation device, right? Mobility. Because if you are a local authority or the state government, if you are provide what people need and also what people demand, then you can see people mobility and they will come and settle over there. And Tebow argue that the threat to exit can induce efficiency because if the authority, local authority or state government, when they realize that some people are leaving the state, then of course, then you can say that it's a sign that exit induce efficiency, right? Then of course, if you want to retain, then of course you have to meet the demand of the people, local public good production, right? So under a certain unrealistic condition, public good provision will be fully efficient at local level. This is how you can see prevalent regulation, how to provide public good at local and state level, and also you can look at the optimum level of the provision of public good, right? That's what he has said. So we will continue this because I think some more points are to discuss under the centralized government once we meet next week. So I will post the presentation. Then of course you can come prepared next time if you have any point to be elaborated further. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. You are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good night. Good night. Good night.